Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Friday. It is October the 10th, and it is a Friday. And it could be a friendly Friday, but it is not because we had a friendly Thursday with Steve Friend. However, that doesn't mean that we will not maybe get Steve Friend back. I'm not in control of the man's schedule, and he's going to give us time. We're just trying. But I got a message, and I actually want to quote it directly. Sometimes you just get the right one. This is from Marine Corps. I have no reason to doubt that, but I'm just saying I don't know for a fact. And his statement over on X, which got very, very little fanfare, was, "The pipe bomb is the Building 7 of January 6th, and your government's still lying to you." I think yesterday's program proved in many ways that regardless of what the story ends up being, the information existed for our government to give us more than they did, and they deliberately gave us garbage. And then we had a very curious experience. Some of you are saying that you're having that experience right now. I'm watching the chat. Yeah, I see it. You're saying that you cannot access this program. Well, I'm sorry that that's the case. And I'm sorry that you're watching over on Rumble, which seems to be more prone to this stuff, because we are going to go hard against people in our government, which is supposed to be on the political right now. And it's not. I'm going to tell you right now, there are things that I'm going to call out that do not play well with either side. I can assure you, with over 1,000 hours streamed on this channel alone, with almost 675 total episodes completed, it's not coming from this end. I have shored up every possibility to make sure that we have a solid streaming platform. And it's as good now as it's ever been. Just for full disclosure, this clean power at all times. We have something like 6 boards, the mics, everything. It can all be run with zero power to the house. We also have our internet service, double reinforced. It is running on the fiber. As long as we have power to those modems, we should be able to get through. It doesn't even require any power to the home. It is not coming from our end. Now, maybe, just maybe, our restreaming service, which I send out to, it's called Restream, is having an issue. But Restream claimed that they had 100% uptime all yesterday and all the day before and all the day before that. And I've gotten absolutely no information from my local end that we're losing internet packets, that we're not sending data across any of our sides. So the internet connection is healthy on my end. They're claiming it's healthy on the other end where it's going out. And somewhere between where we are here and where you are there, some of you guys are getting an interruption with freezes and glitches. And people continue to tell me it's only on your stream. So what does that tell you? I don't know the answers to these things, but I do know that sometimes it's just a coincidence and sometimes it's not. Yesterday's program was sent over to a couple of Congress people. I was told that they watched it. I hope they learned some information. What we also found out, because one of you, is that 1 minute and 14 seconds of yesterday's podcast did not stream to any of the platforms. It went out. I know it did, but it somehow just glitched. And there's a skip. So that the locally recorded file that I uploaded for the audio, if you guys are listening over on Spotify or if you're listening on iHeartRadio or Apple, you got 1 minute and 14 seconds that was not streamed on the other platforms. So I'm going to share that today. And then I will share it again as we upload it. It's pretty interesting stuff going on. And it was a very specific 1 minute and 14 seconds. And maybe that means nothing. I actually don't have a definitive cause here. So I'm just going to present to you the evidence that I've done over 1,000 hours of podcasting. That's a lot of hours, people. 1,000 hours of this show. And we've never once had 1 minute and 14 seconds disappear from the live broadcast. That means it didn't go out to X, it didn't go out to Rumble, it didn't go out to Locals, and it did not go out to YouTube. Maybe it means nothing. Again, I don't actually know. I'm not being playful with you, and I'm not just asking questions. I'm saying I don't have the answer to why it was, but I've sent it out to some folks, and it doesn't even do the same thing that glitches normally do. generally speaking, when there's no data for the data stream that goes out into these platforms, YouTube and the Rumbles and so on, they'll have a blank spot, or they'll loop the same thing for a few seconds over and over again, and then it'll go on to wherever it picks up the full data stream. I'll share with that in just a second here. All right. Since we're talking about data and problems and all these little glitches we have, can I encourage you guys to check us out over on Spotify? If you're having an issue with the live show ever and you're just getting fed up with it, don't abandon us. Go to KyleSerafinshow.com. Find me on Spotify. Follow me over there. We've got about 7,000 followers there. We have maybe 40 or 50,000 followers on the video channels in general. If you want video and audio, you can get it over on Spotify, and that will be the best place for you to get it. If you're watching on the video platforms, give us a like. Let them know that you like what we're doing. The more that you like us, the higher you build the profile here, the more easy it is for it to continue to do it. We're still picking up followers over on YouTube. I don't know for a fact that we're getting screwed with that level. It could be at something else. But if you're having an issue across all the platforms that you're looking at on video, it will be clean on Spotify because I record these shows and then I upload them after the fact. They are streamed out live to you, but I also will give it to you in delay. And you guys, the best thing is there's some Spotify commercials and so on that you may hear, but you can fast forward through them. At least that's what Steve Friend tells me. And I believe Steve Friend because he doesn't lie to me as far as I can tell. Okay. All of that is all interesting stuff. That's where we're going to get started. We're going to talk about insurrection. We're going to be talking about some really challenging topics. Maybe our government is doing overreach, or maybe they are doing the right answer to the problem that has existed for 5+ years. And I think it's somewhere in between there. So we'll kind of go over the nuance of what the hell's going on in Chicago and Portland and talking about the Insurrection Act. And why is the left-wing media framing it like it's a MAGA problem? We have a media that is at one point in time talking about Donald Trump. He doesn't deserve a Nobel Peace Prize, or maybe he does because of what he's doing in the Middle East. And at the same time, he's thinking about sort of declaring an open revolt against the U.S. government on U.S. soil. So that's kind of troubling. It is for me. I don't think that's where our government definitely should be involved, but there may not be another way around it. All right. Before we get too deep in here, let's talk about some other things we don't trust. Government taking care of our water. Many of you guys probably have never even thought about that. How many of you have thought about what's going on in your tap water? I didn't used to care. Actually, I didn't used to care about a lot of things. I married my wife and I've suddenly cared about a lot more. She's always been concerned about water. And there's a lot of shocking studies out there that say things like your tap water could be contaminated with all kinds of wild chemicals and things like that. Having a countertop filtration system is what we've chosen. We have a couple, and one of them is Cove Pure, and it is outstanding. There's research papers out there that show that things like atrazine, oh, you remember that common pesticide that can disrupt hormones in frogs and can completely feminize and chemically castrate them? Yeah, there's some issues. Pesticides can be in your drinking water. They just do it in the runoff. Alex Jones has been talking about this for years, and it's been almost a meme at this point, a joke. Well, the fact is I've got a young son who I'm teaching that there are times when you need to be a man in violence, and we don't need to be feminizing our kids. We rely on Cove Pure for the kiddos upstairs. It sits in their bathroom. It removes all the nasty contaminants from our drinking water. They've got 4 stages of filtration. They certify that they'll pull up to 99.9% of impurities. It's clean, fresh water. By the way, the first filtering, they came out and it always has nastiness in there. It's like all kinds of sulfur and stuff in ours. You can actually see the yellow getting pulled out of it, which is kind of nice. And it's also kind of nasty to know that we'd be drinking otherwise. If you guys want to have a hot or a cold option, if you want tea or if you want ice water, you could do all those things. You don't even need a kettle to boil. In fact, before yesterday's show, I actually hit the hot water button upstairs because I was in a hurry and I made my tea before we sat and did our call-in show. Folks, if you guys want to check out my friends over at Cove Pure, it's covepure.com/KYLE. Again, covepure.com/Kyle. They're giving our audience $200 off one of these units. I think they're great. You can fit every one of our Patriot coolers underneath it, including the 40 ounce. You can move the thing on some magnetic little water catch at the bottom. Check them out. Get the contaminants out of there. You can actually see in real time how much is being filtered, which is pretty cool. We're usually in the 500 to 700 TDS range, the dispersed particles or whatever the heck it stands for. And then you see that it comes out and has like less than 10. Which is super nice to see that there's actually what it's kind of doing. It's measuring all this stuff. Neat little device. Check them out. covepure.com/Kyle. Link in the show description. $200 off. Can't go wrong with that. All right, let's get into today's weird stuff and other things we do not trust. All right, so I got my drink of coffee going, and I'm ready to go with that. I think we're going to lead with something like I just was telling you about. Should we share with you the missing minute and 14 seconds? There's always this like conspiracy nonsense about it. I don't know what it means, but this is exactly what was cut out of yesterday's podcast, and I'm going to share it with you right now You guys make up your own mind what this means. There was talking. I was beginning to summarize that, about 30 seconds of summarizing what Joe Hanneman and Steve Friend and I had been talking about regarding January 6th. This is the missing minute and 14 seconds. Joe, here's what I got. I got government agency, unknown, possibly Capitol Police. It sounds like could be the one moving the devices, possibly someone in DHS, a Secret Service, or some sub-entity there. So that's one government agency and potentially the one out of Congress. So maybe two branches of government involved. They move and they place these devices for a training purpose. They move them maybe for a nefarious purpose to be able to draw away and set up a real sort of nasty law enforcement interaction. So those are possibilities. And then sometime very, very soon thereafter, because I've been showing this B-roll footage on the corner, which your report indicates was doctored, was basically downgraded by both frame rate and also by aspect ratio. If I understand it correctly, I'll put that up in a second. But that means that the FBI released knowingly garbage footage. Right there was where it stopped. Okay, so that's the context of what we were discussing. The FBI released knowingly garbage footage and then it goes away. And at that point, somebody had to know that they were releasing junk with 1 frame per second and a bad aspect ratio and not the clarity that you might expect. So now we have another agency that's doing the investigation. And I would call that part of the cover-up, if that's what this is. This is a cover-up action where you are now giving false information. And then we have it on the screen right now. Folks, the FBI is apparently actively seeking information for pipe bombs out of Washington, D.C., and they're going to offer a $500,000 reward, which we led with. So they are actively perpetrating a fraud. They are part of something saying that we have a problem that we need the public's help solving, when in fact it appears by every reasonable aspect of it that this is something that they have already figured out is nonsensical, and they are basically just doing a charade. So then you have a DOJ entity, a DHS entity, and potentially even a congressional agency all involved in something. And then if we were to go even further, we could say that our buddy, our mutual friend, Steve Baker's supposition has been that DOD was involved in incitement. And if that is the case, we now have 3 branches of the executive and potentially an office underneath the legislative branch of Congress, all involved. And they're going to say, sorry, our bad. It was just a training exercise. And what, we just now discovered it 5 seconds ago, even though we clearly have been taking the steps that indicated we knew starting about a week after the fact. Am I misphrasing some of these things as far as what is the worst case scenario there? All right. If you just heard those and you were watching it on the YouTube, on the Rumble, on the Xstream, then you guys could see the visual that kind of cued where those breaks were. Now, if you were not, and if you were listening on the audio platforms, you would have gotten this yesterday, but you can always see the visual if you want to switch over and use our Spotify platform, because you get audio and video. Why is that relevant, I think? First of all, it seems important that when we are doing a summary, sometimes we bring these folks on. Joe's a great example of it. He knows so much information. He's so deep in the weeds with these stories that it's impossible to get all the information to everybody at all times. And so they're talking about something and it's complex and it's like, okay, cool. Like, well, how do we clean this up so people can understand it? Can I get a summary? And so I usually try to do those things. That's when the clearest message goes out. It's also in my voice, which seems to be a problem for these folks. This is relevant because right now we are talking about the Insurrection Act. There are multiple articles. NBC has blitzed it. The New York Times has also covered it. We're seriously interested in talking about whether or not we have open revolt against the U.S. government in various U.S. cities, whether those local governments are also part of it. And I think that's a good question. And I think it may actually be a yes. So you may actually have something where the Insurrection Act is required. And we were at that moment as well at the end of 2020. In fact, all of the people that have lost their ever-loving minds about ICE raids and we're so emotional and we need to go out there and throw things and shoot fireworks and try to raid the federal building and stop them from driving and we're going to lay down in traffic and all the other dumb things that are going on right now because of deportations, those same people lost their minds about the fictional idea that a bunch of black men are being shot unjustifiably by law enforcement. That was the same story. So same people acting, same organizations moving it, and It doesn't matter what the cause is. The cause is, what are we against today? Let's get together and do this. And by the way, that reminds me, if you guys have ever seen the movie PCU, it's probably worth going and watching again. For those of you that have heard the hey, hey, ho, ho, da, 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 da. That actually, as far as I can tell, maybe it goes back even further, but man, they made a really good, funny prank on this 90s movie. I want to say it was in the 90s. 90s movie, PCU, where they're marching around and these women are really mad about a fraternity house. And they say, hey, hey, ho, ho, this penis party has got to go. So somebody should be singing that at these wild leftists that go out there and do their stupid cheers and their chants. And yeah, they're catchy and they got the drums and they're keeping good rhythm. So there's that. But Trump's talking about the Insurrection Act in the same way we are talking about the possibility that they were going to have to invoke insurrection because of what happened in the election at the end of 2020. In the same way that we've heard that J6ers are referred to as insurrectionists, despite no charges of insurrection being leveled. Thanks, Renzo. Renzo in our chat over there just called it out. 1994 PCU, I think. I think that's what he's telling me. Yes, good movie. Good funny stuff. This is an 1807 law, the Insurrection Act, okay? And the last time that it was used in the United States is 1992. You'll remember the Rodney King riots. And so that's what you're seeing on the screen here. There's the picture of the Sunnyside Market. It's a famous picture, a bunch of guys in woodland camo. You guys are seeing it before the M4 was introduced in big ways. So you've got, the M16A2 looking rifles. They got the A2 buttstock on there. They're all wearing kind of heavy helmets and face shields and so on. And they're wearing the old flak jackets because this is before the GWAT sort of moved into the plate carrier world. The Insurrection Act. Donald Trump said at the beginning of this week he was considering invoking the Insurrection Act if necessary, particularly if the courts and the state and local officials delay his plan to deploy the National Guard. Well, I'm going to give you a news tip. Portland and judges in Oregon have said you cannot. They've started deploying the Texas National Guard. He had a fight about this in California, another fight in Illinois. Illinois judge also said the same story. You can't deploy the National Guard there. So what do? This is an open defiance of, I would say, both federal law and it fights against the supremacy clause. But I would actually say that it goes deeper than that because it seems to me, I'm not an expert at studying all this stuff, but it sure seems to me that these folks have found a way to really push the envelope when it comes to how close they are aligned with the Antifa types. I've got a slide here that I put together, and I can't find it now for some reason. That's interesting. I wonder why not. Where the heck did our slide go? There's a push at this moment to introduce a fight against the helicopters that are supporting the ICE operations, some of the aerial platforms, and then it also seems like the city of Portland is willing to kind of get behind that. They seem like they're open to supporting what they're sympathetic to it. Now that actually aligns very clearly with what I saw when I went to Portland in 2020. This concept that this is Portland, we love our activists. There are people here who we want to engage in free speech. We want them to be able to do this. So you guys tell me, what the hell is this visual about? This is a City of Portland poster. Portland.gov/federal. It's got a picture of a Black Hawk helicopter on it with the seal of the City of Portland. And it says, "What the hell-y?" Quote, "There is an increased presence of helicopters over South and Southwest Portland, resulting in significant noise. This appears to be related to federal law enforcement activities and is not related to city activities or something that we can control." So now they've given the problem, as they see it, which they don't have any ability to control, and a location. And so what you've seen is that Rose City Antifa and those affiliated with it, there's an entire sort of underground culture of, they post these things very publicly. They've got no problem owning what they're going to do. And so right to the side on the screen that you're seeing right now is an invitation to play laser tag. You're invited. Laser tag. There's iconography that shows a Black Hawk helicopter, very similar with a slightly different turn on the silhouette from what the city of Portland put out. It almost looks like the same people would have designed this, or at least people who have seen it. And so there is a picture of a Black Hawk helicopter silhouetted, and it is covered in laser strikes with green laser beams going down out of view. And it says the following, quote, every night for weeks, we are forced to listen to the threatening rhythm of helicopter blades as the federal regime spies on us. The only limit power knows is our refusal to submit. This Saturday, October 11th at 9 p.m., you are invited to fight back. We're talking about the Insurrection Act here. We're talking about what it looks like to actually say you're going to fight against a federal regime. We'll talk about that in one more second. It says, quote, all you need is a laser. Leave home. They can see where the laser is coming from. Go to a park, a field, or some other public place, and once the clock strikes 9 p.m., unleash your beam at the copter. Mask up. Coordinate with friends to throw a laser party. Let's take back the night together. It won't take many of these to ground the helicopters. These are people who are posting and actively asking for Portland residents to engage in felonious activity, specifically targeting federal law enforcement. What do you call that? And isn't it interesting that it looks exactly the same, that the city of Portland's flyer has a slightly different kind of layout, but essentially it's the helicopter on the top, some sort of a message, and then saying, yeah, it's the feds. It's their fault. We even have portland.gov/federal. I didn't actually go look at that. In fact, I'm going to go do that right now. We don't always do things on the fly here, but portland.gov. I just want to see what it says here for those of us that are interested in, is this an insurrection? Portland values and the federal government. That's what it says here on the screen. The city of Portland, by the way, they have the mayor of Portland, who is an effeminate white guy with very, very thin wrists. He's like very slim and kind of not imposing. And he's standing with a bunch of people that have signs behind them that have the Rose City, which is what they call Portland. So that's not necessarily a fascist symbol or anti-fascist symbol. And then they have they have a black flag with some sort of anti-fascist iconography and a rainbow, and another guy holding a sign that says fashion with an arrow through it. This is on the official website of the city of Portland. The top banner reads, learn about our sanctuary city status and efforts to block federal overreach. Awesome. As long as you call it overreach, it's okay, right? And the city of Portland has a long history of partnership with the federal government. It's getting tougher as the White House issues orders to clash with our values and the law. Learn how Portland is standing up for our community while we work with our federal partners. The first featured content is an interview, Portland and federal troops, standing up for Portland, the legal action. Portland is a sanctuary city. Portland's federal grants, what we're doing about diversity, equity, inclusion, local values on the national stage, and the city of Portland executive orders, impacts, and procurement and grants. There you go. The mayor's name is Keith Wilson. There's a whole story about him. The first thing about the related programs and projects is the Office of Equity and Human Rights and the Immigrant and Refugee Programs. So there you go. But remember, it's Donald Trump's fault because he's floating the Insurrection Act. He said, I'd do it if it was necessary. So far, it hasn't been necessary, but we have an Insurrection Act for a reason, Trump told reporters when he was asked under what conditions he would consider using the rarely used 19th century law. They really love to bring this stuff up, right? These guys are all in for obscure use of law or obscure sort of court cases right up until we get to the spot that says something about, yeah, it would actually hurt us. He said, if I had to enact it, I'd do that. If people were being killed and the courts were being held up or governors or mayors were being held up, then I'd do that. I mean, I want to make sure that people aren't killed. We have to make sure that our cities are safe. They go on to talk about how it was last used in the LA riots. You'd think that would be reasonable. Shouldn't we make sure that our people aren't being killed? What does it look like over in Chicago today? We can check out Hey Jackass. We can find out that the shot counter is still about the same. People are being murdered at a rate of 19 hours on average. There was someone murdered so far this year in Chicago. Every 19 hours and 1 minute. And even though we're only 10 days into October, there are 14 total homicides with 53 people who have been shot. Almost 360 total homicides on the ticker here. How awful is that? This week alone, 6 people have been shot and killed since the 5th to today. Through tomorrow. It's not even including tomorrow yet. Again, they're averaging a homicide, more than one homicide a day. So what do you call that? What you probably call that is a MAGA problem. That's probably what you guys would find out. And, God bless them. Here they are. NBC News again. I got a couple stories from NBC because they seem really, really hot on this. But this is also something picked up by the New York Times. NBC and MSNBC cover it the following way. NBC says Portland's anti-ICE protests have become a magnet for MAGA influencers. I recall the time when I was still working in the Bureau, when I was still sitting in a car and watching bad guys, including people from Antifa, and we were listening to Ben Shapiro at that time. I was, a lot. I know a lot of people were. I don't know if his audience dwindled after COVID stuff, but at that time, he had a massive audience. And I was listening to the stuff he said, and he always loved to point out the Republicans' pounce. It's not that something bad happened. It's not that people that were leftists were involved in it. It was that the people on the right responded. And MAGA has become a stand-in for anybody that's on the right. I regularly get called MAGA. I don't even know why. Portland's anti-ICE protesters have become a magnet for MAGA influencers. Right-wing influencers and media figures have flocked to Portland, helping bring national and the Trump administration's attention to these ICE protests in the city. And that's an issue. Well, they're out there doing the thing that you're allowed to do under the First Amendment. Isn't this theoretically like what the left loves? Isn't that what liberals were all about forever? They were interested in, can we speak? Can we all talk? Can we not use violence right away? It's really, really telling to me. It says, within a week, Nick Sorter experienced lows and highs of being a MAGA influencer. He was jailed in Portland after the police arrested him on suspicion of disorderly conduct. That was a really sketchy arrest. I've listened to a bunch of different coverage of that, including from Nick himself, also from people that were in the area that were watching it. A fan of Donald Trump, with 1.2 million followers on X, he traveled to Portland's largest city to document the protest scene outside of an immigration and customs enforcement facility. This was actually not unknown, but it was actually in its nascent stage in 2020. And it was the way that I knew what I was getting into when my team was sent out to Portland. Now, I'm going to give you guys a little bit more nuance on there. Some of you may have heard this again, but I'm going to repeat it. The FBI's investigation into what was happening in Portland was robust. It was capable. And it documented what should be enough for significant amounts of either RICO charges or some version of organized criminal prosecutions. There is zero doubt that there is organization and structure that exists on these street level protests. They are organized, they are well publicized, and they are really easily documented because they use unencrypted radio channels that can be copied in the open air, and the FBI did that. They did that while I was there. I know for a fact that they were capturing audio of these people coordinating their protests and also coordinating their illegal activities, including things like this. They would say when they were going to be somewhere, they would post a flyer up that said everyone's going to gather at fill in the blank park, and this is going to be the action that we take. And then they did it. And then they would all show up, and they would put people on motorbikes that were not violating federal law, but they were conspiring to do this kind of thing. So the idea that you could charge a bunch of January 6ers with conspiracy charges for things that didn't happen, seditious conspiracy, despite the fact that they weren't even in the area, there is no question in my mind that you should be able to go after some of the people that are putting this stuff up. If you are soliciting people to feloniously violate federal law, and by the way, throwing lasers up on a helicopter is a potentially life-threatening situation. If you destroy the ability of the helicopter to see where they're going and they get spatially disoriented, they can drop that down and kill the people in the helicopter. They also can kill the people that it lands on. I arrested somebody for this at Trump's inauguration. This has been a tactic of the left for quite a while, and is a really dumb and dangerous and very short-sighted juvenile thing to do, shooting lasers at aircraft. It's one thing when you have something that's fixed wing and it flies in a straight line, and it basically is going to eventually be outside where the angle is going to change dramatically and they're moving at 500 miles an hour. A lot of times helicopters are static. And if you have them holding a static hover and you go out there and you blank out the entirety of the windshield and they're unable to see what's going on, or you hit them with, they've got night vision goggles and it blears out the entirety of what they're looking at, it's punishable by up to 5 years. It's not the least serious federal offense there is. It is a felony. And it can result in that. And it also can result in real serious damage. Now, most commercially available lasers do not have the ability to blind, even though they can happen temporarily. You're probably not going to have it there for a long time. But acting like MAGA going out there or MAGA people going out there to watch is the problem is wild. And MSNBC takes it to an even deeper level where they say that his war on quote unquote Antifa lowercase a, folks, you can see it on the screen right here. It's buffoonish and it's sinister. And it's written by an author and commentator talking about a bizarre gathering at the White House on Wednesday. This was 2 days ago. President Trump and many of his top aides assembled for a group of far-right activists. It's always far-right. They always use these terms. I don't even know what they mean anymore. And the influencers have discussed the horror of Antifa. Antifa, again, lowercase a. And what the administration will do about it, and they're going big. So Pam Bondi pledged that the government will be breaking down the organization brick by brick. Kash Patel explained that there was going to be a whole-of-government approach going after Antifa, again, lowercase a, which is not the way that it's written on the other side, deploying resources with multiple agencies. Homeland Security and Kristi Noem said they wanted everyone to understand that the network of Antifa is as sophisticated as MS-13, TDA, ISIS, Hezbollah, Hamas, and so on, and they are just as dangerous. Antifa is not a network or a collective or a syndicate. That's the reality, says Paul Waldman. It has no headquarters. It holds no assets. It has no members. It publishes no pamphlets. It records no podcasts, and it sells no branded merch. There's no policy agenda or plan for a national takeover. It is essentially an idea. Well, that's funny because that's what the FBI under Chris Wray said to us as well. One that should begin and place all Americans in their supporting category. They oppose fascism. And that's what we all should do. And there's a concentrated effort right now on social media to say, if you are someone in the military, and if you have a family member who served in World War II, and if you thought that fascism was bad, then you too are Antifa. And we are all Antifa. And there's a bunch of losers that are out there pushing this. I don't know what that is. Let me tell you really definitively. From someone who has been on the ground with these clowns. Some of you have experienced this too, but I'm telling you, I've sat in a car, been surrounded by a potentially armed security response team that was trying to keep feds, I'll put that in air quotes, feds away from their protests, which also involved like violent felonies. There were 6 of them. They were dressed in a uniform. They all had the same patch, which was a black power fist. It was in black and yellow. It had the letters juice underneath it with periods in between it. You guys can look up what that's all about. And they were responding to a radio call from someone who was wearing a green National Lawyers Guild Association or National Lawyers Guild. This is a legal watchdog group in theory, but in reality, it's a bunch of radical hardcore leftists who are running around on the street, or maybe they've just co-opted these legal observer nonsensical hats and t-shirts. But a woman in all green who was very, very easy to identify was on a radio reading out license plates, including mine in Portland in September of 2020. And I know that the FBI has those radio calls. And then the response was they went looking for us. They ran off one of my colleagues. They surrounded him with bicycles and people on foot and a guy on a motorcycle. And they did the same thing to me. The National Lawyers Guild was involved with the people that were calling themselves BLM and Juice and also those associated with Antifa. This is not really that hard to prove. And there are some of us that were on the ground that can explain it very clearly. They were case agents that were brought in, not from Portland, to be able to investigate this, and they got it all lined up. Antifa, capital A, is just as much a group as any other sort of like cellular-based terroristic type organization where there are basic marching orders, but they can act autonomously on local cells. They don't need to check in, but they clearly are funded because none of these people seem to have real jobs, it turns out. Maybe they all work in cafes and they all get a bunch of really good tips as baristas, but I don't think so. And I'm telling you, when I sat there, it felt pretty real when a bunch of people are banging on your window and they want to have a chat with you at 10:30 at night when you're the only person. I kid you not. The streets were completely empty. I'm parked in a rental Toyota. It was a gray Toyota Tacoma 4-door, and they were all around. And there's someone out there grabbing the picture of the license plate. There's another one out here in the front, so I can't drive in front of him. I would have had no problem running him over if anyone produced a weapon. And their hands are going down to their waistband. What's going on down there? Those are known as furtive gestures. That's how you get shot when you're hanging out around cops. I'm wearing a Carhartt blue hoodie. I remember this very distinctly. I was wearing my body armor on. I think I might have even had my plates on, but I can't be certain of that one. I had my rifle down at my left knee, sitting right next to me, and my hand sitting right on the top of my handgun, which was appendix. And the windows are down, and we're talking to them, and I'm thinking, if one of these clowns produces a weapon to get into this vehicle, I think I can shoot them before they can shoot me, but I'm taking a little risk. And I'm wearing body armor, so hopefully it's just a body shot. That was the thoughts that I had. What do you do then? They knew what they thought I was. They came out there with the intention of confronting a federal agent. So, Trump is not wrong in this stuff. But it's truly telling to me that this is the same sort of question, and this is the same thing that is being re-adjudicated that the January 6th Select Committee was so concerned about. And this is an article from MSNBC, which I pulled from 2022, written by none other than former FBI agent Frank Figliuzzi, who is also coincidentally being sued by Kash Patel for defamation right now. So isn't it interesting? I don't care for Frank Figliuzzi. I don't like the way that he talks. I don't think the things that he says are necessarily true, but I do think he has the right to say them because I do think that speaking is appropriate. It's one thing to protest. It's one thing to say that we don't like what the government's doing. It's quite another to hold a city hostage, to block off all of its streets, to terrorize the residents, to try to go out there and organize parties where you're all going to commit a federal felony and try to knock down a federal helicopter who is doing a job that they are allowed to do, like law enforcement activities. We used to get park police to sometimes fly on some of our missions that we were doing when I was supporting FBI raids with Washington Field Office, and they'd get up above us and they would offer it. If we were going to a really particularly bad neighborhood, they would fly up there because they had paramedics and they had the ability to air evac us. It's nice to have a helicopter above you, particularly if you're doing something dangerous. Anybody who's been in the military knows if you can get air cover, that's great. You love that. Isn't it interesting that the Insurrection Act was a problem then too? So I'm fixated on this. We're going to cover the White House meeting, the goods and the bads, and kind of the silliness of it, because there's, as usual, there's too much theater. We can't help it. Before we do, real quick, let's talk about my friends over at Patriot Coolers. They're probably not welcome over there in Portland, the Patriot Cooler folks. But they would be welcome in most of your houses. PatriotCoolers.com is the website. Patriot Coolers with an S at the end.com. It's the fall. It's RV season. We're coming out of like fishing and moving into hunting season for those of you that are doing that sort of thing. Guys, check out their hard coolers. They're outstanding. They're as good as anything that you're going to find out there. And I think they're actually better in a lot of ways because their layout and their design is very nice. I think it's superior to a Yeti. You can see that they have a screw-in drain. It's angled the way that you'd expect. The modularity of it is very nice. They have replaceable latches, which is good. They've got a good seal. It'll keep ice for 7 days or whatever the hell it is. It takes it forever. They've got some that have handles and some that just have ropes on the side and poles. They have 13 bars on the side to let you know they remember the flag. They give money back to veterans causes. You guys can save 10% on any of the big items or the small items. You can get free shipping over $50 using promo code Kyle, Kyle. It's 4 letters. It's 10% off. It's the same deal they give to military veterans if you guys want to sign up, but you don't have to give them anything. You just give them my name, and that's good enough. Again, patriotcoolers.com, promo code Kyle. Look at the link in the show description if you guys want to see the Kyle Seraphin Show collection, which is just like some of our branding. They're going to try to get the show logo up there as well. And I use their cooler almost every single day. It just lives in my minivan at this point. I have a Yeti, and it just sits in my garage. I don't even use it anymore. I didn't like the way that it took up space at the base versus the top. I'm really neurotic about that kind of stuff. Okay, let's continue deeper into this little story. I want to actually cover that meeting at the White House, which was so problematic. Let's kind of set up the good, the bad, and the ugly. Here is Seamus Bruner. Now, some of you guys may know this name, Seamus Bruner. And I knew that I knew it too. And I was like, why do I know the name Seamus Bruner? Oh, yeah, because I received a book, and I think it was one of my dad's buddies sent it to my dad, who gave it to me. And the book is called Compromised: How Money and Politics Drive FBI Corruption. And I don't think I read the whole thing, but I definitely skimmed a bunch of it. And I was like, yeah, this is pretty on point. And so I used to keep it with me at my desk when I was working in Washington Field. It was sitting at my offsite when I was working out of Manassas, Virginia. And then it was also with me when I was in Las Cruces. And I put it up prominently, Compromised, to let people know. And at some point during my FBI career, my mother-in-law gave me another book. And it's entitled A Higher Loyalty. And it's written by none other than former FBI Director James Comey. A higher loyalty, James Comey. Higher than the Constitution. The higher loyalty was to James Comey, who's like 6'9", and he is loyal to whatever he thinks up there. He's higher than everybody else when he walks in a crowd, so he's loyal to James Comey, from what I could tell. He's a charismatic speaker. He's quite good at what he does. And so A Higher Loyalty, Truth, Lies, and Leadership was the book he wrote when he left the Bureau. My mother-in-law gave me that one. And I just kept them together. They're kind of like a little box set. They're the Seraphin FBI box set of irony, if you will. Compromised and A Higher Loyalty. So I had them on my desk. And when I moved out of the Bureau on April the 18th, I lost my badge and my gun. I was cleaning out my stuff. Some of you guys may have heard this before. But I was stripped of my badge, which I had stuck in a bulletin board. I had taken off the badge. If you guys have ever seen how FBI badges work, like a lot of law enforcement, they have a pin and it actually pins to those pieces of leather. So you've seen the leather on the belt. There's actually a way you're supposed to wear it on your collar because FBI badges are so small. And so I took mine out of the leather because I bought that with my own money, and I had it stuck in there. In November, when they kicked me out of the office for COVID, I left my badge in the office and I never carried it again. Which is why when I was out in the desert in February, when I was shooting and a cop came up and talked to me, I had what's called a dupe badge or a duplicate badge, and it was bigger than the original badge, and it's not the real FBI badge. And they actually wrote me up for carrying a not real FBI badge, which who really gives a shit? I wasn't pretending to be something I wasn't, but I had this other badge, which I still have. So my badge is there on the thing. My gun was taken from me. All my FBI equipment, body armor, and so on. They wanted my magazines from my handguns, but they weren't theirs, and they wanted the rounds out of the magazines. So I made this ASAC named Eric Brown hold his hands out, and I just dumped the rounds out of the magazine like he was receiving communion, which was really funny to me because I just was like, "Here, take freaking 15 rounds, you clown." So he took those, and I got everything else out, and the only thing that was left on my desk was compromised and a higher loyalty. It was just sitting there. And my boss comes up to me and he's like, "Hey man, you forgot something." And I go, "Oh no, I did not." And he's like, No, you've got 2 books on your desk shelf still." And I said, "Well, those are yours, Ryan. You can keep those." And he's like, "Thanks, man." So hopefully compromise and a higher loyalty are still hanging out there in the FBI office in Las Cruces to remind people about what a great organization it is that they work for, that's driven by money, politics, and people like James Comey. In the meantime, Seamus Bruner actually was speaking at this group. He works with Peter Schweitzer, and I think he has an organization that does investigations into government nonsense like this. Government Accountability Institute is what it's called. And so he spoke at this little thing. This is him talking to Trump. I think this is part of the better stuff. And then we'll get into some of the kind of cringier piece of it as well.
Please, go ahead.
Mr. President, thank you for having us here and bringing together this panel of brave journalists, everybody on this side of the room. And no one can speak to the violence better than these people here. So I think we know that this is not just a story about violence and chaos, as you alluded to, Mr. President. This is a money story. And at the Government Accountability Institute, my colleague and I, Peter Schweitzer and our team, we followed the money, and we followed it to the top of what we call the protest industrial complex, Riot Inc. And we found a network of NGOs. It's not just the Soros network, the Open Society network, it's other funding networks, the Arabella funding network, the Tides funding network, Neville Roy Singham and his network, Foreign Cash. And it's also big left-wing funders. Some of them are not citizens of this country. Mr. Hans-Jörg Wyss of Switzerland. They're pouring money into this entire ecosystem. And so I want to share 3 money facts with you about what we call Riot Inc. Number 1, like any corporation, Riot Inc. has many divisions. It doesn't just have the Antifa boots on the ground division. It has PR divisions. It has marketing divisions. It has a very well-funded legal division to get these boots on the ground back on the streets as quickly as possible. But it does have those investors that I mentioned. Number 2, we have identified dozens of radical organizations, not just the decentralized Antifa organizations, but dozens of radical organizations that have received more than $100 million from the Riot Inc. investors. These would be the lawyer groups. These would be the groups that advocate for calling good, honest Americans fascists, et cetera. And then 3, I think the most shocking thing is that we have found that more than $100 million in U.S. taxpayer funding has flowed into these funding networks, including at least $4 million to these very groups themselves, not just Antifa types, but there was an event in Atlanta called Stop Cop City. Over 60 rioters were charged with domestic terrorism. These groups received money for that from both the billionaire class as well as taxpayer money. So
we're going to put that up over on the Locals channel. So if you guys want to watch that, there's about a 3.5-minute clip there. There's a couple of these clips that are a little bit longer, and the money does seem to be something interesting. That's not something that's foreign to those of us that have been paying attention. If you guys are longtime members of this audience, you also know we interviewed Tyler O'Neill. He works with the Daily Signal. He's got a book out there talking about what's called the Woke-topus. And it's how the dark money cabal has been manipulating the federal government. And so the federal government manipulation also happens at the grassroots level. A lot of these groups, Tide Foundation and so on, are going to be very familiar with you. He's showed us what that woke-topus octopus thing looks like. And there are some dark areas of it, including federal funding that actually goes in. And he actually explains the feedback loop of how they advertise and they organize and they lobby, and then they end up getting money back to do what they're doing, and how Democrats have been funding that. But I don't think the Republicans' hands are clean. And the reason why is because they keep funding our government. The more they fund it. So he's talking about Soros-funded groups, but there's all kinds of others. If you guys want to go out and follow the work of Tyler O'Neill, I recommend that. You can follow Seamus Bruner. He's not wrong either about this stuff. Talking about the money is sort of the better answer of how this stuff worked out. I think that it's not wrong to discuss that that's the root problem. There is clearly, that is how you would prove that there is in fact organization behind these groups. And that may be the way that you end up saying, like, there is in fact a group of people that are funded to resist our federal rule, and therefore they are specifically in open revolt. There is some legal precedent historically for that. I think that it might be a little bit more controversial today because we have a lot better idea of what goes on, and they're a lot better at hiding how these money connections are, but they're out there. So Kash Patel makes that note. I'm not particularly keen on the way he says it. This does seem very theatrical, but the things that Patel is saying in this particular meeting are correct. That doesn't mean that everything he said during that meeting was great. In fact, the beginning of it is terrible. I'll play that in a second too. I'm kind of leading with the stuff I think was the stronger arguments, and then we'll go to the cringier stuff. But here he is making the argument that following the money is going to be how you tie these people to organizations, which makes it a federal nexus and a federal crime instead of just property damage and local trespassing.
It does not require rocket science. We are following the money. Money never lies. And that's what it's going to take to bring down this network of organized criminal thugs, gangbangers, and yes, domestic terrorists, because that's what they are. They are harming everyday citizens in every single one of our communities. And the folks you see here on the right and left, they're some of the bravest men and women we have today. They're reporting the stories live time because the mainstream media won't cover it. They're putting their lives on the line. They're standing up for the flag. The least we can do is stand up for them. So you have my thanks. I read more of your stories than I do theirs because you guys are putting out the truth. And we deserve a country where you are protected as equally as they are. We, in this FBI, will go after with the criminals with a vengeance. We will not rest until we find every single seed, money, donor, organization, and funding mechanism that we have. And I want to echo the Secretary's comments on Scott Bessent, who's allowing us to map out these networks through their financial criminal activities, which has been going on for decades. And I would like to remind the American public, they built this disease temple of corruption over decades. And in 8 short months, Mr. President, you have crippled their foundation because of your leadership here. Because
that's where it gets really gross and cringy. So I'm going to play you some of that stuff too. I don't like the word cringy, but it does seem to fit. Here's what I found kind of interesting. They always show pictures of how peaceful these people are. This is a picture from NBC. What you're seeing are some people that are black clad, some people that are wearing some fun things like the anti-fascist frog. It's in like this blow up costume. We're all having a good time. We're all wearing masks outdoors in the darkness in 2025. It's totally normal. You know, this does look like what mental illness looks like. And why are all these people able to do that? How do they all have this time? They're also out there during the day doing weird stuff. But the real fun always happened at night in Portland. We'd see kind of like the remnants that there was a problem. And then as it got darker and darker and as the sun fell, every single time you would more and more frequently see people get agitated up. And it didn't seem to matter that, you know, I think they were just living a nocturnal lifestyle. Like you'd find, punk rock kids that were in a band, except instead of going to a band concert and mosh pitting all night, these guys would mosh pit with like federal agents. There's great journalistic coverage of this stuff. It's being done by people like Nate Friedman. Some of you guys may have seen him. You should definitely follow him. He's on YouTube. He's over on X. He's got a bunch of different views. A lot of people have seen him unmasking professional protesters. So the money is there. You've also got people like Nick Sorter, who both got arrested, but was also in this meeting there. You've got some people that are more on the academic end of things, like the Seamus Bruners and the Peter Schweitzers and so on, and your Tyler O'Neills. There are people out there that are doing this work. The problem is this: none of those people have any federal authority to actually go and hand it over, and they're not actually doing a criminal investigation. But we already know they did the criminal investigation. I know because I know they set up a command post in Portland for all of 2020. There was 100 days of riots. This stuff has mostly been done. And now, unless this continues on, and some of these people will be able to tie back and they'll still be the same folks involved. I don't think people age out of this protest game. A lot of these people can still be indicted for the ongoing conspiracy that has happened since 2020 and the George Floyd riots, or whatever the hell we're calling those things, 100 days of riots for no particular reason. They just hated feds. I did tell you that it was a little bit more cringy when he starts getting into the Donald Trump, you were given this great mandate and you're so great. This is obsequious nastiness, and they feel compelled to do this. This is yet another example. I keep thinking that Patel is going to lose his job at some point. You know who I haven't heard anything from, just for whatever it's worth, folks? I have not heard anything from Andrew Bailey, and neither have you, since he showed up. He showed up on September the 8th. He's been there a month, just quietly doing things. You know, we also haven't heard anybody inside the FBI complaining about Andrew Bailey. In fact, they haven't said anything about him at all. And there are people that clearly would have to be working with him. That tells me that he's got some respect locally, that he's able to go and get some of this business done, that he's not sitting there. But this like insane instinct to immediately drop to your knees and bow to Donald Trump whenever you're doing one of these meetings, that you must do a 90-second to 2.5 minute long sort of like worship session. It tells me that Patel specifically in this one, because it's just real gross, he's desperate to maintain his job. And the only way he does it is just blindly pledging loyalty every single time he gets in front of a microphone and a camera. So here he does. For whose benefit is this? You know how easy it would be if you were like an actual leader and you were an actual person that was working on behalf of, you guys ever had any, like an employee come up to, like, hey boss, just so you know, whatever you need, I got your back. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. Got it. No problem. Thank you. Good to hear. I used to have people that worked for me that would do that. Hey, if you're having any trouble with the schedule, just give me a buzz. I'm flexible. I want to help you out. Oh, thanks so much. I appreciate that. And then you have this. This is not that. This is something else.
Mr. President, the American people gave you a sweeping mandate in your victory in this election cycle, and they demanded safety and security for our citizens. And your administration, with your leadership, has provided us with the resources that we need, which is a whole of government approach to go after criminals absolutely everywhere, not just outside of this country, but within this country. And that takes a whole of government approach. The interagency seated up here with the Department of Homeland Security, our Attorney General, our Deputy Attorney General, and your White House staffers, including Stephen Miller's leadership, has allowed us to go out there and map out these networks. What we are doing at the FBI is simple. It does not require rocket science. We are following the money. Money never lies. And that's what it's going to take to bring down this network.
So there was the lead up to it. So he started with kind of like a butt licking, and he ended with a butt licking because that's how he does it. In the meantime, the people on the left are no better. They're also framing strange and ridiculous arguments. This is the New York Times, which I think is a pretty bizarre piece as well. It's the same thing that NBC was saying. Right-wing influencers are shaping the guard fight in Portland. This is that Republicans pounce attitude. Donald Trump and the administration are amplifying the voices of the pro-White House podcasters and streamers eager to ratify the president's description as Oregon's largest city as a hellscape. It's not a hellscape. It wasn't, at least. But it's not safe. And it's not normal. I'm a reasonably fit, capable of violence adult male. And at 40 or 41 years old when I was sent to Portland, I guess I was 40. I think I was 40. I carried a freaking tomahawk with me because I thought I might need an edge weapon that I didn't have to reload. And I was seriously thinking that if I got into a shooting that my agency wouldn't back me up, and that it was a real possibility. There are homeless people everywhere. There are mentally ill weirdos. There was a dude sleeping in the parking lot of my hotel before I moved out. I moved out to Beaverton because I was in downtown. I was like, oh, I'll just be close to the action. That's where I want to be. And I looked out my window the first morning that I went and took a sleep there. I go to bed in a beautiful hotel room that was like probably $600 a night. And I think I paid like $99 a night because nobody wanted to stay there. And this crazy dude was sleeping on the ground in the $20 a night parking spot, like right next to where my bureau vehicle was. And he's got a fire, like a campfire in the middle of the parking lot on the concrete. And he's sleeping there with his buddy, and they wake up, they roll up their yoga mats or whatever the heck mat they were sleeping on, and he puts a freaking sword in his like scabbard, and the sword is made out of like sharpened rebar. And he's wearing leather and animal things, and he looks like he's coming out of Mad Max. And I just went, what in the actual hell? I'm out of here. I'm not trying to go down to my car and have to shoot some homeless guy with a freaking sword. So it's not a hellscape per se, and you can obviously operate during the day, and it's fine. And then you see what happens at night, and they're pretending like it's the problem of right-wing influencers who are going down to document these idiots. So there are better voices that were being brought up. This is Julio Rojas who's talking about this. He's been covering it on the ground. They had Andy Ngo there. They had Katie, I think her name is Daviscourt. I'll have to check her name up again. But she's the lady who had the black eye who got beat up by one of these people. Like they are absolutely wild, and they don't think there's going to be any consequences. And by and large, they've been correct, at least for about a half decade now, if not more. I mean, if you think about it, Portland and Seattle have had this culture going on since I can recall the WTO riots of like when I was in high school. So this is a long time culture that's been built up here. Here's Julio talking about his experience there.
Thank you, Mr. President, for having us here. And not to sound like a broken record, but it needs to be said that Antifa is real. Yeah. It's real. It's a threat. I just saw them last weekend over in Portland while they're causing mayhem over there. And the reason why they're such a big problem is because we have Democrats and a lot of people in the mainstream media refusing to acknowledge that they even exist, right? So how can we as a country begin to address it when you have large swaths of these people who are supposedly decision makers and people who are supposed to inform, they don't want to say that it exists. Because the common argument is like, well, they're not a real organization because there's no national leadership, they don't have a national headquarters, so how can law enforcement go after a group that doesn't exist like that? Well, law enforcement goes after criminal groups that organize to rob banks or do smash and grabs. They don't have a registered LLC, they don't have official membership cards, they don't have a business address, but law enforcement still goes after them because they're working as a group. These people don't just show up, randomly at the same time to do the same thing, dressed in a very similar fashion, espousing the same ideology. And they say, well, it's an ideology. It's like, well, yes, it's an ideology because there's people alive, present, that believe in it, and they're acting on it. And so I've been very well aware of what Antifa's been doing. I was very busy during the riots in 2020. That was probably my most exposure to them prior to this year. I've been at the ICE facility at Broadview. I'm originally from the Chicagoland area, unfortunately, but that's where I grew up around. Like I said, I was in Portland. I was covering the riots in Los Angeles as well. And probably one of the most disturbing parts about that is, in addition to Antifa being present, they were tagging the streets with CJNG, which is Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, which is a cartel. So you have these people who are working basically in concert with other terrorist groups to say that we're here, we're present, and we're gonna attack federal agents. And
isn't that enough to understand? They don't necessarily have to be in concert. What I remember listening to something. It's like you don't see like the all of the fish in the Amazon. You don't see piranhas attacking each other necessarily. They sort of all work. They're not really helping each other per se, but they're not helping each other. They're kind of all operating in concert, and the chaos creates more opportunities for more things to happen. One of you guys mentioned that there's a Green Beret that's a streamer that's out there. I wanted to cover that too. This is from the New York Times. I just found this fascinating because the New York Times says, quote, they were handing out flags and trying to get Antifa to burn them. Right-wing streamer Matt Tardio, center, said of fellow influencers. Reported by Jordan Gale for the New York Times. You're seeing him on the screen. That's Matt Tardio. Yeah, he was a Green Beret for something like 16 years, or he was in the Army for 16 years, and he's a Green Beret. He was an 18 Charlie, an engineering sergeant for Special Forces. But he's just a right-wing streamer. It's kind of like when they call me a MAGA podcaster, and they ignore the fact that I have some experience in the world. This guy spent 16 years serving the country. He spent almost 2 years as a police officer after that. He's gotten involved in some other things. He does some streams. I don't agree with everything he has to say. That's fine. We're not supposed to, it turns out. We have just really different life experiences. But to try to water this guy down to being something that can be completely ignored because he's a right-wing streaming guy and he's part of that MAGA influencer group that's causing the problems. He's a right-wing influencers that are setting up the fight between the National Guard. Who do you think probably backs the National Guard and the people in law enforcement and the military more than a guy who's been a cop and a guy who was in the military for 16 years and actually understands what it looks like overseas and has actually seen what insurrections look like, who's seen what a counterinsurgency and an insurgency operation might look like? It's very disingenuous. So that's all happening right now. And we're not getting the best from our DOJ. Again, I'm telling you, they have these cases built. I don't think that Patel knows. I don't think Bondi knows. And why are these prosecutors not aggressively going out and seeking and indicting people? Why are we not hearing about slews of indictments that should be happening for any single assault on federal officer or otherwise? We keep hearing that they assault people, they're involved in obstructing, and then they immediately get pulled into a building, and then they get released a couple hours later, and they get back to work because there are National Lawyers Guild and other sort of legal aides. They all know what's going on, and the game is all theater. It's catch and release. It's catching the same fish over and over again. I experienced that when I was in Portland myself. We caught a fish that we were watching. This woman was the subject of an investigation. She was a person that we were observing. To put a $10,000 a day or $10,000 a shift surveillance team on somebody is not a small amount of resources. We followed her all over the place. We caught her breaking local laws. She was investigated by the FBI. She was arrested by Portland Police Bureau. Interviewed by the 2 case agents. Let go. Never charged. This stuff happened over and over again. They have these cases sitting there. So when I hear Pam Bondi talking tough, it makes me think that this is not serious. This is still more theatrical presentations. Because if they wanted to do the talking, they'd let their paperwork do the talking when it comes to indictments.
Antifa beats journalists. Antifa attacks our police stations. They attack our courthouses. They dox our law enforcement officers. No more. They are a terrorist group, and we are coming after them.
We are here at the White House today to unmask Antifa, to follow the money all the way to the top. If you want to get to the bottom of who is fomenting this chaos and violence in our country, you must follow the money.
I was a mainstream reporter in Seattle for 10 years before I quit mainstream media, in part due to its refusal to acknowledge the dangers of Antifa and radical left-wing violence.
Part of the problem that we have is that a lot of people refuse to believe that Antifa is real. It is just a made-up thing, but I have seen them. They are real, they are dangerous, and they are violent.
They are an organized, systemic, international criminal enterprise. And what the FBI is going to do is trace the money, follow the funds, and find every single person that was involved in funding the riots and the violent acts of criminality that they are perpetrating on our street.
I've watched Antifa brutally beat, harass, and threaten Americans in the street, but all of that ends with the Trump administration.
It's just too much. That was Sav Hernandez on there. There was Patel. You guys saw some of the other faces that you've seen. Bruner's on there. The message is fine. The ominous staged nonsense. I'm sure they got all of them to come out and stand in front of a camera and do their hit. And I don't know if they rewrote that or they just were going off the fly, but you don't need to perform. Don't give me production. Produce indictments. Produce consequences for these people to make them stop. Because the stuff that we're seeing, the indictments, they are not speaking as loudly as you would think. They really are not. This was broken this week as well. The New York AG, Letitia James, has been indicted in the Eastern District of Virginia after an investigation by Donald Trump's DOJ. This is the story coming from CBS News. A grand jury indicted Letitia James, marking the second Trump foe to face federal prosecution. And what for? One charge of bank fraud and one charge of making false statements. The indictment alleges that she bought a house in Norfolk, Virginia in 2020 with a mortgage that required her to use it as a second home, but she ultimately rented it out to a family and she used it as an investment property. This feels so hypocritical. It feels hypocritical, and I understand it, tit for tat, good for goose, good for gander, all of the arguments, FAFO, all this kind of thing that is being said. Were we not upset that Donald Trump did supposedly false valuations of his businesses, took out loans, and nobody lost any money? Did anyone lose any money? Did the bank lose any money? Does the FBI really investigate mortgage fraud? I've signed that agreement every time I bought a house, and so have you guys. I'll just tell you right up front, the FBI does not investigate mortgage fraud. Not for your mortgage, and not for my mortgage, and not for Letitia James' mortgage. The indictment says she purchased the home for $137,000. I don't mean to be a jerk about that kind of money. She borrowed less than $110,000 to buy a house. She borrowed less than $110,000, and allegedly she saved about $19,000 over the entire life of the loan. It's probably a long-term loan. 5 years at the shortest that I've seen for a mortgage. Maybe it was a 30-year. Who knows? It doesn't actually say. She saved $19,000 in potential interest. Guys, this is not it. False statements and bank fraud. Same story with Jim Comey. Jim Comey indicted for a false statement and obstruction. These are the weakest garbage. Do not say it's still a felony. Do not say, well, it's still breaking the law and no one's above the law. I get all that. I'm telling you that if you had the goods on these people, you'd have the goods on them. And it would be more than that. How many of these MAGA influencer types that are out running around in Portland were the ones screaming about treason, right? And hanging people. And we were going to rid our government. I don't care that Letitia James has been indicted. Not for her. But I do care about what precedent that sets and who else is going to be on the... Are we going to see Ken Paxton investigated the same way for some minor thing? For those of you that are so short-sighted to think that this is a good plan, I assure you it is not. There's a little bit here, too, about the ex-special counsel, John Durham. Everybody thought John Durham was going to be the guy. He ended up pointing out something that all of us knew. What he knew is that the FBI could not be saved by policy or procedure. It could not be saved by new laws. It could only be saved by putting people in who had a sense of values, who had a sense of ethics, who had a sense of responsibility of the Constitution. That's essentially, I'm paraphrasing what the Durham report said, but that was a big piece of what he said in the executive summary. And apparently, he also investigated James Comey. This is not a new investigation, just like the stuff in Portland. The stuff in Portland was really damning. Even from the surveillance side, I knew that what they had was incredibly damning. Why are they not charging those things? The files are there. The agents probably still exist in the FBI. I have to imagine most of them are still there. And if not, the files are still there. You can go pull them up. What were the cases that were being worked? Go search for tags. Antifa. Go search for whatever the surveillance reports were that my team put out there. Washington Field, SOG, ID-21 was the squad. Whatever ID-21 contributed to in September and October of 2021 is still of value to you right now. And you could go out there and charge those things. Ex-special counsel John Durham undercut the case against Jim Comey in an interview with prosecutors, sources say. So this is a report coming in also. This one's coming from ABC. It says the special counsel spent nearly 4 years examining the origins of the FBI's investigation into Donald Trump in the 2016 campaign, the alleged ties to Russia. This ended up debunking, I think, finally, at least for some people already knew, the sort of Russia hoax. He was unable to uncover evidence that would support false statements or obstruction charges against the FBI director. Durham tried this. They're going to run it. They think they've got it. They got a grand jury to agree out of 2 of the 3 things that they brought in front of them. So they're going to be able, but it wasn't a strong case. And again, the biggest problem here is that the things they're going after are so minute, folks. What it says is most of the actions that were taken by Jim Comey, by Clapper, by Brennan, by Letitia James, by Fani Willis, any of these people, most of the things they did were legal. The operation of doing Arctic frost, it's not going to result in indictments. It's not going to result in a bunch of FBI agents going to jail for what they did because they were legally permitted to do so, because you have an intelligence agency that also does law enforcement and they get to pick and choose winners. And they chose Antifa as a winner and they chose J6ers as losers. They said the president's supporters in 2020 are actually a threat to democracy in the same way the left-wing media is. And so they went after J6ers with gusto. Probably on fake terrorism charges at this point. And the guy who was in charge, Stephen Jensen, he was in charge of the domestic terrorism operations section. He said, I'm the guy. I'm paraphrasing his congressional testimony. I was in the room and helped decide that we would actually do terrorism. We would do terroristic investigations into these people. And a lot of that justification came from the pipe bomb, which we showed you yesterday. And go back and watch it again. We showed you yesterday that at the very minimum, the FBI has been working against their own interest in trying to identify who this person was. And in reality, the most likely choice is they probably have been covering up for it for a long time. And it turns out there's a guy who used to know that. A guy named Dan Bongino used to preach about this, that it was a cover up, it was a distraction, it was Plan B. I've talked to Bongino on his radio show about that stuff. He's the number 2 in the FBI. Why is he not screaming from the hills? This was a cover up. And I am not going to cover for the old FBI with the quote unquote new FBI. And the answer is because it's the same FBI. It's the same damn thing. They're all the same agency. And once we get a hold of that ring of power, once we're sitting in a seat of power, we don't want to give up that power. And we're going to use it for petty bullshit. We're going to indict Letitia James over saving $19,000 in interest over a long-term loan because she said it was going to be her first house when it was really going to be a second house, and she used it for an investment opportunity. How much money did she make on a $110,000 house loan that she rented out in Norfolk, Virginia? I bet you it wasn't that much money. We're talking about not that much. So that's what you got on her? How many millions was Donald Trump held accountable for? What other kind of crazy stuff did they do by changing the statutes of limitations and doing all this shenanigans, this legal nonsense? And so are we going to see Republicans stand up and do the right thing and say, nope, we are not going to fund this government. This government is a problem. It's coming at us. No, they're going to get bullied by the left-wing media here. They're going to get bullied into opening the government again. You notice, by the way, during that meeting, the C-SPAN had the government shutdown counter. There's a whole article. I think I have it over here. Let's see. Government shutdown. Oh, it's on the screen right now. Senate fails to vote again. Senate vote fails. Government shutdown drags on. Nobody knows. Nobody knows the shutdown happened. By the way, even the federal government employees haven't been missed a paycheck yet. They won't be paid today. In a week, they'll have their first missed paycheck. We're not even at the first missed paycheck. And you have stories that are coming from, let me make sure I quote the proper article here. My kids could die. It's ABC News by Lauren Peller. I'm angry because of this situation, just like yours, Mike Johnson says. Military mom begs to pass bill to pay troops during shutdown. My kids could die. Are you kidding me? Your kids could die? Guys, I lived on a military salary. I went from making almost just shy at six figures. I was in the $90,000 paycheck range at 25 years old. And I went and took almost $80,000 pay cut. I went down to made $18,000 a year. I still had money in the bank. Didn't mean that the people around me knew anything about money, and they should definitely do that. And I was responsible enough not to have kids when I had no money, but still, your kids are going to die from missing one paycheck, which hasn't even happened yet, and you're saying that, and they quoted you. Federal workers fret over their finances as government shutdown drags on. Look at the same language. That's from CBS using the drags on bit. Isn't that something? Federal workers who are either furloughed or required to keep working without pay during the ongoing government shutdown express concerns. Roughly 750,000 of the more than 2 million federal workers are furloughed. They can't agree to a funding bill. They've had all year. Are you guys pissed off at the people who didn't do their job? No. And by the way, these are what the negotiations look like. There's a parody because someone put a sombrero hat on Hakeem Jeffries. This is what the negotiations look like for this. It's happening in the hallways of Congress. Tell me this is not theater. Listen to the repeated nonsense. He forgot his line, so they just stayed on the same one. Here we go.
Why don't we sign on right now? Let me ask you a question. Did you get permission from your boss? Why don't we sign on right now? Did your boss, Donald Trump? You can easily extend the ACA right now. Did your boss, Donald Trump, give you permission? Yes, he is. No, he's not. And by the way, so let me ask you a question.
Why did you vote to shut the government down?
Why did you vote to shut it down? Let me ask you a question.
For years, you always lectured about how we need to keep the government open.
You're making a show of this to make yourself relevant.
Why don't we sign on right now?
Let me ask you a question. Did you get
permission? My buddy wanted to make hot sauce, by the way. There's a company where you can make custom hot sauce and you can put your own label on it. And we'd like to do something about spicy rhetoric and have maybe a hot sauce with Hakeem Jeffries wearing a sombrero. I don't know if anybody would buy it. I don't think we could sell it for enough money for it to make sense. I wouldn't feel good about selling a $15 bottle of hot sauce to be able to break even on the damn thing. But it is funny. It's silly. It apparently offends them. But it just tells me it's theater. Let me show you the last bit of theater, because all these people are going to go vote to fund the government at some point in the near future. It will happen. It's inevitable. There's no question in my mind that at some point, all of our government will reopen and everybody will get back pay, even with the tough talk that Trump is doing. Here's Lindsey Graham. He's freaking outraged. He's outraged. They spat on me. They spat on me. They got pictures of whatever nefarious things I'm involved in with other dudes or ladies or whatever I'm into. He's super pissed. This is Lindsey Graham, who basically licked his lips and salivated at being able to pass FISA. He was so excited about spying on Americans for the last 2 decades. But he's outraged that the FBI spied on him. And then he's going to vote to fund it. Want to bet? Anybody want to take that bet? Can we get some odds on that from Cashy or whatever the heck it is, or Polymarket? This man will fund the government, guaranteed. Here he is. He's outraged.
Suggest he may be a Russian agent or Carter Page that is now no longer reliable. How does that not get to the court? Can you tell me how that doesn't get to the court? You can't, can you?
I can't, Senator, and I
Can
can't
you tell me
discuss it.
why my phone records, when I'm the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, were sought by the Jack Smith agents? Why did they ask to know who I called and what I was doing from January 4th to the 7th? Can you tell me that?
No, Senator, and there were 8 senators in total.
Huh? She can't tell you why they didn't go to a court to get that? Are you kidding me, Pam Bondi? You don't know what the difference is between a subpoena and a search warrant? Really? You don't know what it looks like to get a to get toll records? It doesn't require anything more than a subpoena, which means that it's not approved. You don't have to go out there and contest it. It doesn't have to be argued in a court. Subpoenas are really straightforward. They're administrative process. She doesn't know that? No, they're doing theater. That was a play acting. That was play acting between 2 actors. Same lady that did this, right? She's the same one that started off this.
Antifa beats journalist?
They beat journalists? Blah, 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 blah. Give me a break. They're going to go out and fund it. And there's some real injustice in this country. And I don't hear this one going on. How about the left? How about the libs that used to be able to defend things like free speech? Why are they so excited about taking Alex Jones? This story, I want to cover it because I like Alex. And I think this is atrocious. You don't even have to like what he says. You don't have to like what he says at all. You can despise what he says. It used to be in America that we defended the right of people to say things that we didn't like, which is why I would defend the right of the Attorney General to say her theater. I defend their right to do theater. I also defend my right to go out and call it out. I'd like to not get sued for defamation for saying things that hurt people's feelings in government. Alex Jones is asking the Supreme Court to block the $1.5 billion judgment against him for defamation. And this is written by NBC News as well. He's a right-wing conspiracy theorist, Alex Jones. Well, I've appeared with Alex Jones, and he's brilliant. He's sometimes off the reservation because he's Alex, and I don't think he wouldn't be mad about that. But he's right sometimes, and more importantly, he has a right to say whatever the hell he wants. To claim that it's defamation, to say that something didn't happen. How many people think that 9/11 was an inside job? How many people think that it was Israel that killed Charlie Kirk today? How many people think the pipe bomber was a bunch of FBI agents, even though it probably wasn't? And it was probably somebody from maybe a congressional staff or United States Capitol Police. How many people think all these things? Are they allowed to think them? Are they allowed to say them? Are they allowed to have these opinions? Are we really going to litigate whether or not people can believe that something happened or did not happen? And that's going to be, what if you think the Holocaust wasn't real? There's plenty of people that think that. Is that an indictable offense to the people that were in the Holocaust? Can they sue you for defamation? Seems like there's a lot of big names that are asking those questions. Did we not sign up and swear the oath that we were going to defend the First Amendment? Wasn't that something that I did? Didn't many of you do the same thing? Didn't you say, hey, all enemies, foreign and domestic, is it not an enemy to sue somebody and get a $1.5 billion judgment? You guys can't even fathom what $1.5 billion is. Neither can I, by the way. $1.5 billion. It's $1 million a month forever. Jeez Louise. The new filing, Jones said that the court must immediately get involved because he needs his website. InfoWars is on the verge of being turned over to the satirical news site The Onion, which is run by a former journalist from NBC. How interesting. If the case is not put on hold, quote, InfoWars will have been acquired by its ideological nemesis and destroyed. This is what the lawfare looks like. That's why I don't like seeing it on the other end. It's part of what I don't like, the tit for tat, because yeah, they did it to Jones. Just make it right and de-weaponize. Break the weapon system. Don't use the weapon. Because eventually someone cuts off your hand on the battlefield and they pick it up and then they run with it. And they will. They 100% will. Go after the things that are obvious. Go after the things that look like this. Go after the things where somebody decides that they're going to cold stand right in front of you and say, we, the government, stand with them, the insurrection, protest, people who want to do federal law violations. That's fine. Use that. I can get behind that all day long. You want to try to enter federal agents? I'm behind you. Stop that. You want to go out there and take down Letitia James because she lied on a mortgage statement for $18,000 spread out over 5 to 30 years? Seriously? That's a rounding error for Donald Trump. $18,000. They spend more than that in the first shift in overtime for the Secret Service to protect him or anybody else for that matter. It's gross. It's gross to see people not have principle. So yeah, fix this. This is not right. And instead, you got the theatrical and the saying somebody made a mistake. You got this claim. This is on accident. Listen to this. This is Jim Comey. He was summoned. By the way, when you have a BS indictment for a false statement and a weak obstruction charge, a summons is the right thing to do. Would you rather? We talk about being a Christian nation, maybe a post-Christian nation, but at least many of us have those values. Many of us. So, are you called to do to others as was done to you, to go out there and do an eye for an eye? Or did some of you also read the Sermon on the Mount, where Christ called people to turn the other cheek? I'm not saying that we should turn the other cheek legally, but I do think that if we want to restore order, you start using the process as it was designed. And a non-violent, non-likely to run and flee, not likely to fight law enforcement, and 100% likely to show up for his day in court, guy like Jim Comey probably should be summoned to face his charges and not have a SWAT team. The problem with using a SWAT team to get him to experience what Roger Stone did, which I do understand is a big hypocrisy, and they should point that out nonstop. What they should say is, we are better, and we are taking the politics out of these things. And we are not going to send agents to go do something that they know is pretty questionable. Because if you can get people on the conservative side of law enforcement to just say yes because that's my job, and if not, I get fired, then you are going to open up the same, you're going to keep hiring the same people. My buddies and I had this discussion the other day. Ready? Here's how it goes. From January 6th onward, the law enforcement agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, of DHS, of HSI, of ATF, DEA, etc., all the people that were used in the Biden administration weaponization game, they all said the same thing. One of two things was said. Go out and arrest those Trump supporters. And they said, yes, sir, let's get them. That was one possibility. I'm in. And the other one said, you know what? Excuse me, sir, ma'am. I actually don't really feel very comfortable about that. Why don't we just issue them a summons? By the way, that person's name is Steve Friend. I'm sure there were others. And they go, well, we're not issuing a summons. We're going in SWAT. We're going in hard. And then everybody that I know, except Steve Friend, there may have been some other quiet ones that said it, but basically everybody in the Bureau, which is why it's such a problem and a threat to all of us, they said, oh, it's my job? Okay, I'll go do that. Nobody stood up on principle and said, I'm willing to lose my job because that doesn't seem right. We shouldn't be going after them. We shouldn't be charging Matthew Perna with a domestic terrorism enhancement to put 20 years on the clock for his misdemeanor trespass. We shouldn't do that. That's wrong. And I'm not going to go kick down the door to do that. How about a summons? That would be fine. A summons was the right answer for Jim Comey, however much you dislike him. And none of you none of you dislike him as much as I do. I promise you. Because he handed me my credentials and he doomed the agency that I worked for so that I could never work there again. A lot of his work set up the doomed FBI career that I had. And it was a pretty good life to live because I didn't necessarily want to go do this every day. I don't think he should have been I don't think there should have been a SWAT raid. I think that we should be doing better and we should set the example of this is how we do it so we don't have to have the wrong thing happen. Or we could do tit for tat and see who ends up blind. We could do eye for an eye and see if anybody ends up with an eyeball that works, because that's where we're going. That's what's going to happen. I'm training for it. My PT has stepped up. My fight training has stepped up because I think it's going to get stupid because I'm seeing that the people on the right are saying stupid things. This is Bannon talking about the summons and Jim Comey pleading not guilty.
That somehow somebody in a position of authority, either with the court, with the judge, with DOJ, with the FBI, bent the knee to Comey and allow Comey to slip in here like the snake he is, like the vermin he is, like the rat he is, to slip in here and not have to face the cameras. Now, he's going to walk out and go to the podium and, pontificate, I'm sure, if he does that. Otherwise, we'll slip out of here. But this is a major screw-up already, sir.
It is not a major screw up. It's the right move. By the way, vermin, rat, snake, all of those things. Wasn't that the stuff that you guys were really upset about, hearing people on the left calling MAGA supporters that they were dehumanizing? Do we really want to just go, oh, let's do dehumanizing language because it works so well on the other side? Can we not have a little bit of principle and a little bit of circumspect and a little bit of like, I don't know. Can we just stand on just a little bit of decency? You don't need to dehumanize your enemy when they're losing. If you are a Christ-focused person, and many in this audience are, and those who aren't, you still grew up in a Christ-focused United States. Almost all of you did. If you were born before 1990, this country was overwhelmingly a Christian nation. If you were born before 1980, you definitely were. What did he teach us? Go out there and overthrow the Romans? Go out there and fight back? No. He said, you want to beat them? You want to live forever with your virtue? You want to show people something they've never seen before? Go out there and do the right thing because it's right. And it will cost you dearly and will feel like someone got away with an injustice, and you offer it up. Isn't that what they ought to be doing? I'm fine with dismantling terrorist organizations. I'm fine with going after people that are conspiring to commit federal felonies. I'm totally fine with finding that people broke the law. But at the end of the day, what you cannot do is turn around and say, we are going to go after our political enemies because they went after us, and we're going to go after it for minute bullshit. Like mortgage fraud for $18,000. If that's cool with you, then we're going to have a disagreement. And it's fine. It's just my disagreement with this process because I see where that goes. And I see it as the same problem. When I first spoke to Dan Bongino, which is now coming up on, it's 3 years ago, a little bit more than 3 years ago. First time on Fox was probably 3 years ago last week, something like that. The first time that I talked about this, I said, I'm not an inherently political guy, and I'm still not. I am very right. I'm far right. I'm a conservative guy, and I believe that there are principles we should live by, and those principles do not care what your politics are. And so, like, I believe in certain things. I'm still relatively libertarian in the way that I operate. And most of you should understand that if you want to increase personal liberty, you don't do it by using the weapon of the federal government and saying, now we've got it, so we're going to use it. And we'll just wait until they take it away from us, and then they use it on us. And then we'll get it back, and then we'll use it on them. And then every single election is the most important election in your lifetime. Ain't that something? That cannot be the case, and it cannot be a survivable situation. There's one more story I'm going to tell you. I'm just going to read quickly from it because I think it's of relevance since we're talking about voting our way out of it, which we clearly have not done, and I'm not confident we can. Dominion Voting Systems was acquired by St. Louis-based Liberty Vote. The Dominion Voting Systems, which was at the center of a lot of conspiracy, a lot of real problems. If you guys want to follow more on that, go check out my buddy Joe Altman. You can follow Tina Peters and so on. The nation's largest election technology company has been acquired by a St. Louis-based Liberty Vote. The acquisition caps a half-decade that saw Dominion thrust itself into the public eye amid false accusations of election rigging. Liberty Vote announced the purchase. The terms of the deal were not immediately disclosed. Liberty Vote was founded by Scott, I can't say his last name, Lindecker, former Republican elections director for St. Louis. Also found another thing called NoInc, which describes itself as the largest provider of electronic poll book technology to the United States, and dozens of states participate. He says that their technology was exclusively built in America. They have a bipartisan team of former elections administrators. He said that this now will make Dominion 100% American-owned. Okay, I guess we'll see. It's worth knowing that that happened. We'll keep an eye on that one as well. We'll keep an eye on the server farms. Some of these things, we're going to keep an eye on the J6 pipe bomb. Some of these things have been an indicator. They've been bellwethers of what's to come for us. So I'm aware of all those things. I'm aware that you guys can see this. All I'm telling you is I saw the same flippin' genocidal path when I was working at the Bureau as I see today sitting outside of the FBI. As a guy sitting at this podcast desk, I see that we are going to see the same type of weaponization, and it'll just be on another side. And it's not fun. And it's not cool to think that my children will deal with some real danger because of it. I did not plug it again, but I will plug it now. Check us out on Spotify. KyleSerafinshow.com, especially if you guys had any glitches, if you had any issues. KyleSerafinshow.com is where you go on Spotify. Send it to a friend, please, if you would. Join us on Locals if you guys want to get access to the Sunday sit-down a day early. I haven't decided if I'm going to actually run the one with Marty Comey, who shot a bear, or we're going to run one with Steve Baker. Either way, make sure you guys are subscribed to our channels over there, and you guys can like and share the YouTube and the Rumble and the other video platforms. That would be great. Let me give you a palate cleanser, something we can all just laugh about. There are things that our friends on the political left do, including maybe better than any of us. So here is a little tribute to the coffee shops that are nice to go into every once in a while, although I have a hard time paying $6 for a cup of coffee. Here's a lighthearted look at things that libs do well, including people in Portland. I bet you Portland is a place to get a great cup of coffee, as long as you don't have your politics on your sleeves. Here it is, palate cleanse going into the weekend.
One thing you have to admit, and that we can all agree on this, is that liberals make better espresso. That's a fact, Jack. You know what I'm saying? You got to give the devil their due, dude. That is their shit. I tell Republicans all the time, I'm like, listen, you keep your hard-working, patriotic, family-loving lifestyle out of this coffee shop. My coffee's made by some pill-addled vegan witch, some grumpy queer lady with a pocket full of crystals, Sagittarius moon rising or whatever the fuck. She's fresh from an abortion, ready to go. She don't got time for children. She gotta work. I'll be honest, my coffee order is gay. Super gay. I love a Cafe Nico. If you don't know what a Cafe Nico is, it's a doppio ristretto shot pulled quickly into a glass or ceramic mug with a little bit of vanilla syrup, a little bit of orange syrup, an orange rind, cinnamon, and then a little dollop of steamed almond milk. Yeah, I told you it's gay, and you're still mumbling homophobic slurs at me. That's how gay it is. No, you can't order that from a Republican. Could imagine me in Oklahoma, like, morning, boys. One Cafe Nico. What's that? You don't know what it is? Let me tell you. It's just a doppio ristretto shot pulled neatly into a glass or ceramic mug with orange syrup, vanilla syrup, an orange rind, cinnamon, and a little dollop of steamed. He's like, you trying to suck my dick, boy? You're like, what? Gary, come out here. This guy's trying to suck our dicks. I'm like, no, I'm not. Stay back there, Gary. A Republican would be like, listen, boy, we got black coffee, and we can leave a little room for your pussy if you want to put some milk in. If you want the coffee I like, you have to go into these little granola peddling coffee shops. You know, you got to get through all the flags just to get in there. Everyone in there's never had meat before, so they have no bones. They're just
let this run. This is great.
Very tired.
Oh. All right. That's Jeff Dye. You guys should check DYE. Go check him out. I got to go look for one of his long form comedy specials. That's good stuff. All right. Laugh about it. Keep Gary, stay out of there, man. I don't know. I'm a coffee and cream guy, but I don't know what a Cafe Nico is. I bet you my wife does. My wife is a recovering lib. She used to live in a place where that was a thing. She tells me about all kinds of fancy coffee things. I don't know what they are. I don't know the difference between cappuccino and espresso or any of those things. So I let my wife do my coffee ordering. All right, I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. Check us out on the Sunday Sit Down. It's going to be a surprise. It's either going to be Steve Baker, depending on what he tells me in a few minutes here. We're going to record something. Or it's going to be Marty Combs, who shot a bear and talks about agency and how to be a man in America who can just do things. Either way, you'll get both of those eventually. I just don't know which one's going to be. I'll announce it when I make a decision sometime this afternoon. And you can get it early over on Locals. It'll start tomorrow. It'll drop out. Otherwise, it'll be 1 p.m. streamed here on Sunday. God bless all of you. Look forward to seeing you again for that over the weekend. Go get outside. Go train to fight. Probably going to get there. God bless.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram @Kyle Seraphin.